So as usual, I thought it would be nice to do what we always do, which is like just a brief setting the tone or getting ready for what we have before us with taking refuge. And this time I thought I'd take something from Heart of the Path, which is the most magnificent text on Guru devotion by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And it's just a brief, it's not really like a meditation as such, it's just like preparing our minds. So, you know, just maybe 5 minutes before we get into the Refuge bodhicitta prayer. So I'm aware that some of you may not have gurus. Maybe you could, for the benefit of this, think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Yeah? Okay. And those who have your own personal root guru, then certainly take this precious holy being to mind. So just allowing our minds to catch up with where our bodies are at right here in the present moment. And you can just choose as a meditational object the rise and fall of the air flowing in and out of the abdomen. Anchoring our body and mind to this present moment. And so we can think the Buddhas are guiding me and all sentient beings to enlightenment right now. They have perfect knowledge to reveal the exact methods that we each need according to our individual karma, our dispositions, our capacity. They have the power to do this, the ability, because they know our past karma, present and future. They know perfectly the methods to guide us. And they have perfect, consummate compassion, hooking us at exactly the right time. Never giving up on us. And only loving us in each moment. And so who is doing all of this except our gurus? It's our gurus giving us teachings, commentaries, oral transmissions of texts and mantras. It's our gurus giving us the refuge vow so that we can enter into the Buddha Dharma. Our gurus giving us the pratamoksha vows, individual liberation vows, lay vows, ordained vows. Bodhisattva vows. Tantric vows. And so forth. If our gurus were to manifest in a form that was less than a human being, for instance, say as an animal, we wouldn't recognize them as our gurus. And we wouldn't be able to actually receive their guidance. If they manifested as something purer than a human, something that we don't have the pure karma to be directly in contact with, and also we wouldn't be able to engage their precious holy teachings, whilst we did not have the pure karma to see them in the aspect of the Sambhogakaya, on the path of seeing onwards, or the Nirmanakaya. And so they must manifest in an ordinary aspect, in accord with our karma. Only then can we be guided and so this ordinary aspect, according with our impure karma, means showing the aspect of making mistakes, having suffering, maybe even displaying for our benefit delusions like anger, attachment. And so thinking of your guru, based on all of this thus far, if you have your mala, you can do it on your mala, otherwise You can just think how precious, how kind, as if that's our mantra. So precious, so kind. So precious, so kind. Unbelievably precious and kind. So precious, so kind, guiding me in this way. Amazing. So precious, so kind. So precious, so kind. So precious, so kind. It's this ordinary aspect of the Guru teaching us the methods that frees us from the lower realms. So precious, so kind. Teaching us the path of virtue, the causes of a good future rebirth, refraining from non-virtue. So precious, so kind. This ordinary aspect of the Guru frees us from samsara, teaching us the methods to develop ethics, concentration, wisdom, the Four Noble Truths, the three principal aspects of the path. So precious, so kind. This ordinary aspect of the Guru frees us even from mere liberation, nirvana. The complacency of nirvana, having freed ourselves from samsara, but not having fully developed our own realizations, not having fully abandoned obscurations, and certainly not being of immaculate benefit to others, guiding us, strengthening our bodhicitta, combining it with the wisdom realizing emptiness, to powerfully overcome knowledge obscurations. To see the preciousness of every single sentient being. Amazing, so precious, so kind. And so we can feel just so extremely fortunate to come under the guidance of our gurus. One in essence with all Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Never giving up on us for even a second. So precious, so kind. Okay, and so we can then go for refuge. Remembering that refuge, as in, as Chandrakirti, as he said, it's for liberation. So not being satisfied with merely being liberated from the lower realms, but to actually enter the Buddha Dharma for the purpose of liberation and enlightenment as our Mahayana refuge. And so together, recalling the preciousness of the Guru in guiding us, freeing us from samsara, bringing us to liberation and enlightenment. And with the purpose of being able to similarly liberate all sentient beings and bring them to enlightenment, we can try to go for refuge by remembering the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and then the wisdom realizing emptiness. Who is this I that seeks enlightenment? This I, excuse me, this I exists conventionally in mere name, merely labeled by the mind, independence on our five aggregates, independence on body and mind, independence on body, speech and mind. So this being the valid basis, we are merely labeled independence on that basis. So as is the enlightenment we seek, merely labeled by mind, and the transmigratory beings whom we wish to free from all suffering and bring to enlightenment. So as much as possible, trying to embrace the three principal aspects of the path, and we can recite together 3 times. Imagining also that we're leading all sentient beings surrounding us. This is the purpose of anything we do, is to bring sentient beings to that state. So we can each be the umze for all sentient beings. You can even imagine mother on the left, whether she's alive or past, father on the right, those who disturb us in front, our friends and supporters behind and around, stretching out to all sentient beings. They're experiencing immeasurable sufferings in their own individual way, according to their karma and realm, but they appear before us in the aspect of human. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so that's just with the three principal aspects that we've done pretty much every session. Okay, so hopefully we feel a little bit more ready to engage in today's chat about refuge. And I thought it was worth remembering that when we go for refuge, when we recite the refuge prayer, we can wish to go for refuge because we want to, for instance, have good reputation, have resources or some sort of gain or support or some sort of comfort. We might want wealth or whatever we seek of this life. We can go for refuge thinking of just this life alone, that may I have all these things that I desire in this life. But that actually would not even be a Dharma action, right? So we have to be cautious of those sorts of things, seeking only the happiness of this life. And I just want to make sure I can see what slides in next. Excuse me a second. Oops. So then we could also go for refuge, and this time we could be thinking about having a good future rebirth. So we might have given up attachment to this life's happiness and given up, seeking some sort of samsaric pleasures for this life, and that would be a dharmic action, definitely, to seek the happiness of good future lives, to not be reborn in the lower realms, for instance. So it's Dharma. That's the entry point, right? Of it being Dharma rather than non-Dharma, focused on future life's happiness. But we all have that future life happen. Right now we have this, upper realm rebirth, and yet still we suffer. So it's not enough just to be free of that. And so really what we're aiming for when we go for refuge, for it to be pure refuge, is at least to be renouncing not just the happiness of this life, but renouncing samsara. So focused at least on liberation. That's the very first thing that we need for pure refuge. But of course, more than that, as Mahayana refuge, where we're leading all sentient beings to enlightenment, and we're taking refuge until I attain enlightenment. So this very broad span of time, we're aiming for being guided by the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And so, it's with bodhicitta that it's best that we go for refuge. And so I think in some ways, like before we were renouncing, say, happiness of this life, we were renouncing, the lower realms, renouncing the non-virtue, the 10 non-virtues that go as causes to the lower realms. Then we were renouncing samsara. And I think, in this way, perhaps we can say that we're renouncing self-cherishing, as well as renouncing samsara, as well as renouncing mere nirvana. And so this sort of going for refuge in this context is going to be, the best way of going for refuge. So I thought it's just worth, remembering the different levels by which we can practice going from this life where it's non-dharma right through to pure refuge, but even better than that, combined with bodhicitta. So today, we're going to be looking at committing ourselves to Buddhist practice. So actually committing, and how we're going to be doing that is basically one would undergo a refuge ceremony, making a formal commitment. And then within that refuge ceremony, in the second half of that, is then the opportunity to take some vows. And so today I was going to focus on these two parts, look at, just refuge in general to start off with, and then focus in the second part on the vows. So that's where we're going today. And Lama Tsongkhapa is always most precious and perfect and pure. And he's in his hymns of experience or songs of experience, depending on the translation. He says, Although there is no certainty that after death you will be reborn in the bad migration, the three jewels will definitely protect you from this fear. So that's at a very beginner level, isn't it? So therefore, steadfastly take refuge in them and never degenerate their precepts. So when we go through this refuge ceremony, as a part of making that formal commitment, we undertake trainings that we will adopt and trainings that we will abandon. And so by engaging in those precepts, we'll be guided in our refuge. In addition, so to these trainings, these precepts and so forth, in addition, we need to think well about the results of black and white actions. So, you know, it's not just a matter of going for refuge and then we're going to be protected and then we can just, you know, sit back, rest, relax. That's when the real work's going to begin, because we're now entering into the Buddha Dharma. We're actually taking this personal responsibility. And so we have to be our own protector as be our own, you know, our mind is our creator of happiness and suffering. It's the creator of samsara and nirvana. So, you know, we have to really think well about these results of black and white actions and cultivate, obviously, the white actions, which will bring happiness, and restrain from, you know, the non-virtues, which will, the black actions in this case, which will bring suffering. So, and Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, and depend on the correct practice of that to be adopted and that to be rejected. And this is also where vows will help us, and we'll talk about that later. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, I, a yogi, practice like this. You who desire liberation should do likewise. So still embracing that whole concept of refuge is for the purpose of liberation. How do we get there? Well, let's make sure we're not going to the lower realms. Let's focus on getting good future rebirths. Let's really be vigilant about our karma, cultivating virtue, abstaining from non-virtue, taking up the practice of, you know, refuge vow, and that will confine our body, speech, and mind within the parameters of the trainings, what to adopt, what to abandon. And from within that, we can also make sure that we're guarding our karma, and perhaps even living in vows as well, as a way of strengthening our morality. Okay. So as far as, you know, the benefits and so forth of having refuge, actually, let me just stop for a second, and I can just check in with you guys just to make sure your microphones work, just to make sure you're not falling asleep already. Why do you think we need renunciation? I've talked a lot every session about the three principal aspects of the path in the context of refuge. Why is this important for us? Thank you, Aaron.
Is it important because if we don't develop renunciation, we're actually still caught in the dependent origination and the afflicted mental states that in samsara?
Yeah, you're definitely going to be caught within samsara, definitely. Without that wish to be free of samsara, to leave samsara behind and go towards liberation, enlightenment, you're definitely, without renunciation, you're going to be just hooked into that samsara. So without renunciation, there is no pure refuge. You're going to only be thinking of samsara, the excellences of samsara, seeing whatever happiness we find, you know, temporary happiness we find in samsara, going to be just holding on and clinging to that and thinking that's final. You know, that's some ideas. Kodo, you're also going to add something to this.
Oh, well, basically the same line is that I'll just speak for myself, my past negative karmic imprints and all of my attachments to them, they are so strong. And they pop up in a flash of a second, and I can work and be, you know, really meditate and blah, 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 blah. And then boom, a thought comes in and I get angry and I feel this energy rush up and I try to cover my mouth before I let it out. And it's so automatic. It's so Wow. Wow.
Lao?
Wow.
Wow. Oh, good.
Like it's so strong.
Yeah, you could speak for me in that because I also agree. So you can speak for at least the two of us there. Absolutely. So the more we can develop this renunciation, then the more we're going to not settle for samsara, not settle for the lower realms, not settle for even just the upper realms within cyclic existence, you know? So what about wisdom realizing emptiness? Why do I talk about that all the time? Why, how is that important in the context of refuge? Do we need it? Kodo?
I do.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
It's this self-cherishing I on my van, my driving van visor, I have what Geshe Cherub suggested. He said, look at yourself when you suffer. Check
Yeah.
it out. Is it because you're being selfish? And so I have that on there. Am I suffering because I'm being selfish? And I
Right.
have it in the visor because I'm not, my mind, I'm getting better, but my mind is not a friendly driver sometimes.
Oh,
My maneuvering is friendly. I'm slow. I let people in, but my thoughts are,
yeah.
ah, ah, not
I
good.
I think perhaps, if I may say so, I think that more directs to the bodhicitta of the three principal aspects of the path. Yeah. So, you know, abandoning this selfish attitude, this self-centered, self-cherishing, me, mine. I'm not saying it's divorced from the wisdom realizing emptiness, but I think it more neatly fits within bodhicitta. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What about the wisdom realizing emptiness itself, though, more specifically in relation to the wisdom? Why do we need the wisdom realizing emptiness? In this context of refuge, why do we need it? Why do we bother? Kodo might have kept her hand up because she has another question. I don't know, another answer, I mean. Kodo, jump in if you like. No, I'm just wrong. Are you talking? Yep, go for
Yeah.
it.
Isn't it because that thinking that things inherently exist, this is my thing, I am going to be hurt if you, and then we get into this whole separation, and we think that, and we believe that it's so real, but it's just atoms. We're just momentary miracles of atoms in some form that's constantly shifting. And that's why, that's how I get into the self-cherishing I, is through that direction.
Through the self-grasping, holding oneself to inherently exist.
Yeah, that's why
and then
it's
protecting.
so important to not
Yeah.
have XYZ happen.
Yeah, protecting oneself and loved ones, my body, my mind, everything's about me and mine, and protecting that. And then along with it comes the evil twin of self-cherishing, and with the self-grasping, all our problems proliferate, don't they? My goodness. So definitely the wisdom realizing emptiness is going to be directly countering that self-grasping that holds I and mine to inherently exist. Definitely. So we can try to wholeheartedly go for refuge, thinking of liberation. And we may even have that sense of renouncing samsara to be pure refuge. But without the wisdom realizing emptiness, there is no liberation. There is no attaining any goal of liberation and enlightenment without that wisdom realizing emptiness. So instead of creating more causes for samsara, we try to make sure that we bring in a little bit of our understanding of that wisdom realizing emptiness so that we're going in a good direction. that our refuge and that all the practices that we do that follow from that refuge then go in the direction of liberation and enlightenment, not becoming causes for samsara, but to be liberated. Okay, so that's some good understanding that you guys have shared there. So that's really cool. All right, so what else? We can go and have a look at, no, actually, I might even ask you this while we're here now. So we've just done the 3 principles. Okay, so here's another question for you. So how is it that the 3 Rare Sublime Ones protect you from the lower realms? Yeah, Kodo? And there's more than just Kodo in the class, so you other guys jump in. You're being tested on what we've done in some ways, you know, but it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong.
In other words, what do you want me to say? What was the question?
Oh, you had your hand up still.
I
so
never have my hand up. What was the question?
How do the 3 Rare Sublime Ones definitely protect you from the lower realms?
Because the faith in the triple gems, however you want to say it, is the standard base for everything that allows you to be like it's base.
That's
The
you,
faith
Danny.
in the triple gem is the base that allows you to be enlightened.
Did you say your audio is not clear? Did you say base?
I said the faith in the triple gem is the base that allows you to become enlightened.
Okay, the faith in the triple gem is the base, the foundation, the base by which you then, how do you become enlightened? So how do you firstly become free of the lower realms? Forget enlightenment for the moment. How do you become free of the lower realms?
You have to adhere to the Eightfold Path.
The lower realms.
Well, we aren't in the lower realms. We have the precious human rebirth.
We're not in the lower realms, my darling. When the lower realms is talking about the animal realm.
Exactly. So why are
hungry ghost realm, hell realm.
Right.
So we're in the upper realms.
Right.
So
I didn't say anything about the lower realms. Perhaps that might have been a misunderstanding.
Okay. So
I was talking about this precious human rebirth, which is the human rebirth.
Exactly.
Now we have the advantage to be able to actualize the Dharma in order to become enlightened.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm going to call on you, Thomas. If you can unmute yourself. So what do you think? How do we become protected from just the lower realms?
My understanding is that we end up in the realms that we arrive in on the basis of karma.
Okay.
And so in seeking refuge in the triple gem, we're establishing the karma that we need in order to have a more favorable rebirth. And they are providing the access to the Dharma, the understanding of the Dharma that builds that karma.
And then from our side?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm being vague. So you've said relying on the causal, triple gem, that they're going to, create that connection with them, and so that we can create the karma and so forth to, I guess, meet with them again, be guided by them and so forth. But what do we have to do from our own side? Because if we just take refuge, is it all just a passive thing?
Well, no, it's certainly not. We need to develop our mind, our understanding of reality.
Totally.
To practice in accordance with those beliefs,
Good.
to accept the importance of other people and not just ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally. Thank you. Kathleen, jump in and say something.
Sure. I think so. The question is, what keeps us from falling into the lower realms?
Yeah. How does the Triple Gem help us in that way to not fall into the lower realms?
Is I may be wrong, but is it living in vows that keep us from falling into the lower realms?
They definitely will. Yes, absolutely. But what about if we don't have vows? Is it definite that we'll go to the lower realms if we don't have vows, or is there even something more simpler than vows that stops us going to the lower realms? Thank you for sharing this, Kathleen. It's nice to include you because I haven't seen you jump in before, so it's nice.
If is it more?
Do we know what causes? Do we know what the cause is to go to the lower realms? Hodo, you're giving a thumbs up. What's the cause of going to the lower realms? Unmute, darling.
To go to the hell realm, we
Any.
have hatred in us, and we want to kill, and we want to torture and be mean. And to go to the preta or the hosts, we're very attached and we're very miserly and greedy and keep for me. It's all me oriented.
Sure.
And then to go to the animal realm, we are ignorant and we're dull and we don't practice and we know we shouldn't watch that movie and we should read 10 pages of a Dharma book, but we watch the movie and have a beer on top of it and some chips instead of doing what we know we should do. It's not choosing the wisdom that takes us into, and that it creates a dullness in us.
Okay, so you're relating
that
it to
correct?
the afflictions. It's partly correct. I don't know about the beer and the chips and the movie bit, but as far as yeah, you're talking about the afflictions and what follows the afflictions. So a predominance of anger, attachment, or miserliness, you called it, and ignorance. These are predominant afflictions. On the basis of afflictions, we create. Dan, you should be all over this. We create
Negative karma.
Negative karma, 10
Negative
non-virtues,
karma.
the 10 non-virtues, right? What's the cause of the lower realms? Non-virtue. What's the cause of the upper realms? Ethics, virtue. Whether it be abiding, as Kathleen said, in morality of vows, or even just simply abstaining from the 10 non-virtues and practicing the 10 virtues. So this also, virtue is the cause of happiness, ethics, at least a basis in morality or ethics, whether it be vows or just, doing good things that doesn't kill and so forth. This will be how we get into the upper realms as a human or a god. So definitely protecting our karma. Let's have a look. Let's go straight in and have a look at the benefits.
Excuse me, Venerable.
Yes.
Maybe have a quick say.
Go for it, Aaron.
Well, I was going to state that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha provide the conditions for us to express wisdom and virtue. Like the Sangha, for example, provides us the condition not just to train our virtues, but also allows us to create merit through things like compassion and supporting the Dharma itself, which in itself is an act of furthering the Dharma too.
Absolutely.
So the very pursuit of it, in the action of it, is the Dharma. And then the Buddha is the source of both the Dharma and the Sangha.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, all these are good answers and correct, except the beer with the chips and the movie. That bit we can let go. All right. So benefits of having refuge. Well, there's going to be many benefits. We're talking about refuge being the cause and it's going to bring about these effects. And here's just like 8 of them to start with, just to get us started. They're obviously a lot more than 8. So once we actually commit through a formal process of going for refuge and through a ceremony, then that is kind of like the standard by which you become this inner being, this Buddhist. So, but we have to be careful and check up, because just sitting in a refuge ceremony doesn't necessarily make you a Buddhist if your mind is very non-Buddhist, or if you're not showing any reliance on Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, if you're not relying on the causal refuge to create within your own continuum Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So, you know, refuge, just sitting in a refuge ceremony doesn't pervade that you're going to be a Buddhist. It's what you're going to be doing with your mind and the responsibility that you're going to be taking to make sure you're not harming and all this sort of stuff, and living within the trainings, what to adopt, what to refrain from. But in essence, they say this is one of the benefits of having gone for refuge, is that you become a Buddhist, an inner being. It becomes the support for all vows. Oh, my phone thing is down to 33%. So we just might, if I conk out, I'll run on up to my hut, get the charger and come back down. So bear with me if we run out. You become the support for all vows. So once you take refuge, then that's going to be the basis by which you can then, in the second part of the ceremony, take some lay vows if you wish. Some pradamoksha vows, vows for individual liberation. We'll talk about them soon. If you have the refuge vow, then you can take not only pradamoksha vows of a layperson or a monastic, but you can also take bodhisattva vows. You can also take the bodhisattva vows, I believe, with just the refuge vow. But it doesn't sort of make sense why you wouldn't at least, you know, if you're committing to be a bodhisattva, you wouldn't refrain from killing and so forth. So anyway, I think that is the case, though. You can check that one up for sure. And then if you have the refuge vow, then at a bare minimum, there's a lot of other things you need, like the 3 principal aspects of the path. But you can, if you have the refuge vow, it is a basis by which you can take tantric vows. So really, we talked about refuge being the entrance to the Buddha Dharma. So you can see how this refuge vow makes you a candidate for taking all these other vows. And obviously, if you give up your refuge, then you would lose all of those other vows, which are built on the basis of that refuge. If that falls away, everything falls away. Okay? So we've got to be very careful. In fact, we've got to make sure, even in jest, we don't joke about things like even giving up our refuge. So something that we really need to take to heart. And also, this is a decision when we talk about Mahayana refuge. May I, go for refuge until I'm enlightened. So we're talking about even beyond this life. And that's, combining with Mahayana refuge here as well. All right. So, when we take these vows, we'll talk about them soon, but basically, as much as possible, we need to engage in mindfulness and introspection to guard the mind, to make sure that we're remembering what to adopt and what to refrain from, and checking up, mentally checking up. What am I doing with my body, speech, and mind? Am I living in accord with the vow? So having this mindfulness and introspection will be most helpful in maintaining the vow. So also you'll purify obscurations. So from previously accumulated karma. So by going for refuge, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, reducing our mental afflictions. We're going to be purifying negative karma. We're going to even make sure that we accumulate the opposite of that. We're going to be accumulating extensive merit. And because we're living in that refuge, they say that, the merit itself, had it taken form, right? If the merit was possible to take an aspect, to materialize, to take form, then even like the 3,000-fold world would not be able to contain it. In other words, the merit that we accumulate from taking refuge is, quite inconceivable, immeasurable merit. And so merit being the cause for happiness. So we've got to remember that merit being the cause for success even. So there's also, I was thinking about maybe doing in the last session, there's a sutra that basically Shariputra, when he was in his meditation, he had this thought in his mind to ask the Buddha for a teaching on this very topic, to try to come to understand, the type of merit that comes from going for refuge. And I thought, there's a sutra, it's probably only about 2 pages. I thought we might even recite it at the end of session 6, just to conclude. But basically, the Buddha answered by way of an analogy that, even if basically someone with clairvoyance and magical powers and so forth could erect some sort of stupa that, was as massive as the entire world system, and make continuous offerings to it, and transform the ocean into this, like a wax type of thing with a wick, and make light offerings to this stupa, and this ocean would of oil or wax or whatever would never dry up, then even that would not even compare a fraction to the merit of taking refuge. So it's really quite inconceivable and blows our mind if we actually think about it. So I thought we might consider doing that in the last session next week. So we're accumulating all this merit. We're taming our mind, subduing our mind from non-virtue. We're living in the perhaps even refuge vow, but also, pratamoksha vow. So if we rely on the Guru Triple Gem, then we will not fall to the lower realms. And so this is at least a start, but obviously we want far more than that. But the Buddha has actually said that anyone who goes for refuge to the Buddha will not be reborn in the lower realms. And so we can take that, quite beautifully to heart, that is the case. Certainly at the time of death, having refuge, we want to, hold on to, the feet of the Guru, or just to, never forsake me, please guide me, not only in this life, the bardo and future lives, but all the way to enlightenment. And so having that refuge in our heart, having that mindfulness of our refuge and the trainings and so forth, at the time of death, that's something that we're going to be, powerfully taking to mind when we're at the most suffering we will ever be in this lifetime. At that point of death, naturally we're going to have that strength of holding on to the Guru Triple Gem. So definitely we will not fall to the lower realms. The other thing is that we will be protected. So, if you have any fear or fright, whether it be waking up from a bad dream, some people even have like the pressures where they feel like they're pinned down, can't move, can't speak, but they're actually it's like they're awake. Any sort of times where you're feeling, from nightmares or pressures or fears. Even I live in a snake pit, basically. So, and there's even like ones that can kill you. There's one that I've got to walk past just to get here. From my hut, it's like an eastern brown or something. They can kill you. I'm not happy about that one. But snake pit, fears. Okay, so yeah, going for refuge. Guru, think of me. Guru, think of me. Guru, think of me. And even reciting the Heart Sutra, feeling that sense of protection that comes in when we petition, supplicate the Guru Triple Gem. So they do protect us from fears in that sense. And it's like we get empowered when we take them into our heart. But also, if we're not creating non-virtue, if we're not harming others, if we're abiding in the training of the Dharma, then, by not harming others, the causally concordant effect in terms of our experiences, we will not be harmed. So, we get protected in that way as well. Okay, so if we're abiding in all this virtue and vows and so forth, refraining from non-virtue and not harming and so forth, then we're going to be definitely achieving temporary aims like good fortunate rebirths, the cause of which is ethics. If we want a precious human rebirth, we need ethics, we need a like generosity, practice of the perfections, and we need to make out stainless aspirational prayers so that we can achieve a succession of precious human rebirths so that we can practice the path to attain the long-term aims of liberation and enlightenment. So we'll, by entering into the Buddha Dharma through refuge, we'll be entering into this practice and seeing our goals and wishing to proceed in only that manner. So naturally, we'll quickly attain Buddhahood. It doesn't mean by today or tomorrow or this lifetime necessarily, but it just means in the scheme of beginningless rebirths and endless rebirths, unless we attain liberation and enlightenment, in that context, we will be on the right path, and we won't be going to the lower realms where we lose eons and never even hear the word Dharma, Buddha or anything like this. So in that context, quickly. But even just in our daily life, when we think about it, if we live in refuge, then so many benefits come. And these are just some of the ones that, is unofficial, but I was thinking of when creating this. So we get a clear purpose or direction of how to live our life when we take refuge. Not only do we have clear direction and purpose, but our life has so much meaning. And by living in non-harm, and at the very least, and maybe even benefiting, then we develop a sense of confidence about us as well. And, naturally happiness, and we feel that protection, we feel that strength. And so life becomes very meaningful, and compassion grows, and, all of these amazing things, right up to the point when we, develop fearlessness, where we become fearless in the face of harms of this life, or fearless in the sense of going to the lower realms, fearless in the sense of, abandoning eventually our afflictive obscurations, our afflictions, our negative karma, causes of samsara, and abandoning knowledge obscurations. All of those things are made possible, but it's quite far away for us. But if we backtrack that continuum, our own continuum, then we can see the benefits right now in taking refuge. So we don't just have to think about, we'll quickly attain Buddhahood, we won't fall to the lower realms, these sorts of things which we just saw in the in the 8 benefits. But also, even in this very life, we can start to feel these things, that our life has so much meaning and purpose, and we are being useful and beneficial to others in not harming and so forth. Okay, so here's the quote that we alluded to. Actually, we mentioned it as one of the 8 benefits, right, that will accumulate a vast amount of merit. And there are several quotes, and this is one that comes from Sutra, from the Buddha himself. If the merit of going for refuge took form, even these 3 realms would be too small to contain it. A cupped hand cannot measure the great ocean, the storehouse of water. So if we were to, have this great ocean, and we're, getting our cupped hands and scooping up water and counting out those, those cupfuls of water and so forth, it'd be without end. So this merit of going for refuge, if that materialized, the benefit is, kind of like without end, in the sense that it's like quite immeasurable. There's no way we can compare it to anything. It's beyond compare. So, okay. And there's so many quotes about this very thing, actually. There's one when we do it in the 8 Mahayana precepts, even, about living in vows for even one day, or even taking one precept, having a mind of devotion, and making offerings to limitless Buddhas and all this sort of stuff for, eons upon eons. The merit of that does not even compare. to living in a precept for a single day and so forth. So, it's really, really beyond compare. And even particularly so in these degenerate times where there's so much rife negativity and afflictions are so rampant, and the lifespan is usually no more than 100 years quite often. We're living in these very degenerate times, so keeping morality is even more difficult than it was in the past. And so therefore the benefit of not harming and living within morality is even stronger than before. Okay, so I'm just going to go quickly over this before we get up to the vows bit, because we have seen some of this before. I've tried to introduce it when we did each of the particular jewels. So this is what not to do. So we're trying to abandon non-virtue. So when we take refuge and go through a formalized ceremony, then we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We take refuge in those who are beyond cyclic existence. Remember, the Buddha jewel naturally is enlightened, but even the Sangha jewel, we're talking about those Arya beings who have in their continuum the realization of reality. They have true paths in their continuum. They realize perceptually the lack of inherent existence. They may have also even abandoned a portion of obscurations. So we're talking about those people who are beyond, being hooked into samsara. They have the perfect antidote to samsara and are on their way to be liberated by knowing how to be liberated, or they have become liberated or even enlightened. So going for refuge is going beyond those who already are stuck in cyclic existence and don't know how to liberate themselves. So how could they possibly be a refuge for us seeking liberation? Okay, so Dharma jewel, at a very minimum, is to not harm physically or verbally sentient beings. And so this is the real practice of Dharma. So if we're going to call ourselves a Buddhist, by having this refuge vow and then we go around harming everyone with our body and speech, it's not exactly keeping in accord with the trainings of the Buddha. It's actually going against the trainings of our refuge. So, that's why just attending a refuge ceremony doesn't make us Buddhist. Although the first benefit was you become a Buddhist, it's what we do with it thereafter. Okay, so how do we conduct ourselves and live in accord with the Dharma? Are we still, rampant in our afflictions and negative karma, or are we able to subdue our mind, tame our mind? And this is not harming any sentient being, so not just humans, but even not harming, for us, we get march flies everywhere at the moment. And they really hurt. I haven't been bitten for years, but I think they really hurt. It's very painful. But whether it be mosquitoes or march flies or scorpions or, whatever it is, cockroaches, termites, ants, cane toads, whatever it is that is a living being living in accord with refuge, part of the trainings is that we do not harm sentient beings. Now, that in itself can be very difficult because there are going to be times when we may not be able to use humane traps to get rid of the mice. This is one option that we can do. But say we've got termites, for instance, there are going to be times when, sadly, we may need to have pest control and so forth. Or when we're building something, we're digging the earth and we're killing, sentient beings. So this is the challenge for us as Buddhists. If we can refrain, we must refrain. If not just because it's, the easy way out, let's kill these sentient beings, never like that. But if we do inadvertently or have to kill, then we want to make sure we're, purifying, doing the four opponent powers, working for their benefit. We've harmed them, so let's at least free them from their suffering, bring them to enlightenment. deep regret. The stronger the regret, the stronger the restraint, the restraining from actions in the future where we cause harm. But also, you know, part of, if we're harming and killing, maybe part of the remedy could be animal liberation. Amitabha Buddhist Center has the most magnificent animal liberation program probably in the whole FPMT. So maybe making offerings to the animal liberation, you know, things like that, which are going to be more a direct correlation to, as a remedy to killing sentient beings, would be to save them, you know, like this. Okay, and then as far as the Sangha jewel, what we're not to do, part of the trainings of taking refuge, is we try not to keep company with people who have wrong views that go against everything we're trying to adopt and develop in our minds. So if we've got people who have wrong views, denying what exists, and they're saying, oh, cause and effect doesn't exist, there's no such thing as liberation, you know, Buddha, there was never a Buddha, you know, like if they had this sort of idea, or they're disrespecting, denigrating the three jewels, this is not the company we want to keep, because we get very influenced by the beings around us. And so we need to become our own protector. We need to guard against what we put into our minds, whether it be in social media, the news, whatever. It's not saying be ignorant and don't watch the news, but watch the news with a mind of compassion. You know, stop taking sides and, you know, joining this side and rejoicing when beings are harmed, like, for instance, in a war. You know, we have to be very careful with our karma. We have to protect ourselves, and because we become like what we associate with. So there's some analogy, I think, like this, right? Maybe something about some type of wood takes on the scent of, you know, other things that it's with. We want to take on the scent of morality, the, you know, the sweet scent of incense type of thing. So we need to guard who we have in our realm of existence that we're coming into contact with on a regular basis, having the particular type of discussions that may derail our refuge. And then just quickly so if you've got destructive attitudes or negative behaviors, that sort of thing, just quickly to go through this before we get to the vows. So obviously we want to respect any Buddha statue, whether it be made of clay, whether it be made of gold, whether it be something brand new, whether it be something super old, whether it be missing parts because it's been cracked or broken. We want to have this equal respect regarding all Buddha statues and so forth, as if the Buddha in actuality. So we're training our mind, we're guarding our virtue, because we don't want it destroyed by thinking incorrectly or disrespecting Buddha statues and so forth. So obviously not putting Buddha statues on the ground and all of these sort of things, having them up high, having reverence for them. When we see them, you know, even making prostrations, it's not becoming complacent that they're just decoration. Okay. I think that's mainly in essence, and paying respects. The same with the Dharma jewel. So once again, you know, even treating one syllable as if it was true paths, true cessations, that which liberates. Amazing, right? So all of the Buddha's teachings are for the purpose of liberation. So even just one single syllable, obviously if you see a mantra on the ground, a prayer flag on the ground, you know, the text, you know, respecting them, making offerings of incense and flowers and, you know, prostrating to them even. It's developing this, part of the trainings from taking refuge is developing this respect that sees whatever syllable of the Dharma as being an actual true path, true cessation, trying to have that very mind. Same as we did for the Buddha statues, as a Buddha, to see it as the Buddha jewel, you know, in the actual Buddha, in the same way the Dharma, like this. And and, you know, caring for our texts. If we're wrapping them in our book covers, we can be thinking that we're actually offering robes to the text, you know, like that, that we don't just throw our texts in with our regular luggage, you know, with our dirty underwear on our way home, in our shoes and all this sort of stuff. But something so precious is to be regarded as totally precious, and not something just like of material value. You know, there is no value to liberation, enlightenment, freedom from suffering. So respecting the Dharma texts in essence. And then as far as the Sangha jewel goes, once again, even respecting ordinary, even a single monk or a single nun, respecting that as if it were the actual Sangha jewel, the actual being that holds true paths, true cessations, the actual being that holds the key to liberation and enlightenment, the actual being that will liberate ourselves from samsara, from suffering, and bring us to enlightenment. So this is, you know, the training. This is how we protect our virtue and subdue our minds, and even their robes, you know, a single strand of cloth on the ground, picking it up, putting it in a high place, you know. You can even make prostrations. It's developing for our own awareness, our own liberation, our own enlightenment, these things. So I was thinking, you know, it's worth checking up in our own mind just where we're at with our refuge. And on that Sangha jewel, you know, sometimes it's worth checking up our individual biases. So for instance, Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche talked about in a recent teaching, maybe a year or two ago, he said sometimes we as Westerners, we can have this sense of, respect, you know, when we see a Tibetan monk, and he might not know any lam rim, but we had this sort of, you know, cultural bias maybe, where we had this respect as if, you know, this precious monk without any lam rim or anything like that is so precious, and our Sangha jewel, to see him as liberating us and so forth, bringing us to enlightenment. But then we look at our Western Sangha, and they may have studied very well and have at least an intellectual understanding of the entire lam rim and everything, but he was saying that we don't, you know, have that same respect for them. And so I think it's just worth checking up with your own, you know, minds. Do I possess that bias, that I respect someone who looks like a Tibetan monk, for instance, but not our own Western monks or nuns? And then even more than that, I wonder if there's also a bias in the sense of when we see a monk, do we have a greater respect for the monk than we do for a nun? So just checking up, you know, how we might be biased, whether it be a cultural bias, a gender bias. Certainly gender bias exists in, you know, schools and all of this sort of stuff. So why wouldn't it also exist in the sense of a monk or a nun? So checking up, do I possess that bias? And if I do, how do I counter it? You know, debate with yourself maybe the importance and, you know, why is this being worthy of respect and this one isn't? Why is this one worthy of more respect and this one isn't? Am I creating a whole new category of refuge here? Instead of treating all as equal, am I now distinguishing some that I have preference for and others that I don't, and going for refuge to the ones I have preference to, you know, like this. So anyway, I just thought it was worth bringing up those points. Okay. So we were just looking at this amazing verse, and just prior to that were these general trainings, and I have spoken about them on various occasions, but it's this last one here. When we make a refuge commitment, so I like to do it the first thing when my feet hit the ground in the morning. You know, you get out of bed, and then as soon as your feet hit the ground, I like to make my first action, physical action, prostrations. So definitely as part of refuge commitment. We make 3 prostrations in the morning, and then the last action before getting into bed is also 3 prostrations. So this is part of the training as well, to develop some sort of humility as well through prostrations, and to lay ourselves down very much physically, but also, we can be verbally with it as well, but definitely mentally, and, laying ourselves down to be guided wholeheartedly, with this sense of refuge from Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So I talked about not even at the cost of one's life, joking about abandoning the 3 jewels and trust yourself. The other one, this other one I'd like to discuss that we haven't, is the second point here: recollecting their kindness, strive to always make offerings. So even when we first take a drink from water, tea, coffee, something fabulous like an iced coffee, if you have them over there, the very first thing we do is offer it. So you could say, for instance, Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum, and just imagine, clouds of offerings, skies of offerings. You can even imagine how they are empty in nature, but they're taking the aspect of whatever it is that we're offering, food or drink, and they generate great bliss in the minds of the holy beings that we're offering it to, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, of past, present, and future, 3 times 10 directions, all whose essence is the Guru, and we make offerings. And we can do something like that. Now, if you're sitting with people who aren't Buddhist, or you're in a restaurant, you don't need to make a big fuss and scene about it. Remember, being a Buddhist is an inner being. So it's not about drawing that attention and making everybody make offerings at the table before you go to eat. So when I'm at my parents' house or places like this, I try to do it discreetly, like I might just sort of, they might be already, eating away, but I might be just like looking like I'm readying myself to eat or something like this. But what actually I'm doing is making an offering. So we can be discreet in how we do it. Sometimes you sit down at a table and people are talk, and it's like, just be quiet for a second so I can make an offering. But, you don't even have to verbalize that. You can just like give up your attachment to having hot food or whatever, and let them finish their talking and take a breath. And then when they take a breath, maybe you can do your food offering that way. So this is something that's wonderful to do as part of the general trainings of taking refuge, is to offer that first portion of your food or drink to the 3 jewels, and definitely this prostrations morning and night. Okay. So I'd like to get on to taking vows. Obviously, we're not taking them here and now, but it's often part of the refuge ceremony. So I'd like to discuss this in the next part of the session. And I was just wondering, do you guys actually think that taking vows is of any help in your daily life? Do you see it as being beneficial? And if it is beneficial, how? How are taking vows even something worthy of us considering? How do they help us in our day-to-day life? Do they help? Who haven't we heard from? Is this Kodo? You got your hand up? Kodo, my dear? Yep.
You can go to other people, that's fine.
No, you're here, my love. Go for it.
Well, I've taken different vows, some with 16 precepts with my Zen group some years ago, and then recently with Geshe Sherab.
Yep. How does it help? Does it help?
Oh, it's so helpful.
How?
I'm 61. My
Oh.
brain is like, it's not the same as when I was younger. I'm telling you, it's not a joke. And so remembrance is everything. Like there's so much to keep right in the front, there's so many aspects. So the basic vows, and I took my bodhisattva vows, and so some don't feel like they apply to me because I don't live in a monastery, and I'm not going to steal the fruit off of the altar and all of that thing. But they help me remember. They're like little strings of connection. And yes, that's it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So helping you to remember the trainings. So when we take vows, so as part of the second part of the ceremony, you might well have the opportunity to take up to 5 vows. Now, this is, I think I've got the 4 root here: no killing, no stealing, okay, not taking what hasn't been freely given, no sexual misconduct. For a monastic, it's no sexual contact, but for lay people, no sexual misconduct and no telling lies. So these are the first of the 5 vows. These 4 are the root vows. And so you may well be given the opportunity to take as many as you're able to keep. And you may even be forced to take, if you're taking refuge, to take the first one of not killing. So different teachers have different specifications as to what they insist that you must take as part of your refuge ceremony. The 5th one, this is what protects the other vows from being broken. So these root vows would be like non-virtuous by nature. Nobody likes, killing and stealing and, sleeping with other people's partners and, breaking up families in this way and so forth. And lying and things like that only brings mistrust and is only negative by nature. But as far as taking intoxicants, alcohol could even be used as a form of medicine in some contexts. So it's not that it's, inherently bad and a major negativity on its own, but this is part of the refuge ceremony where you get to take, in addition to the refuge vow, lay vows. This one is what protects these ones. Okay, so it's kind of like, what it's like when you take intoxicants, let's say it's alcohol or worse, drugs, you become very uninhibited. And so what you may not say or do when you are straight or sober, when you are out of your mind or on drugs or, intoxicated or whatever like that, you're much more liberal in what you say and do. So I assume you've heard the story about they tell about the vows, as far as this woman was suicidal and she gave this monk basically an ultimatum that she was going to kill herself unless he chose either to drink alcohol, kill the goat, or have sex with her. You've heard this story, right? No? So, well, of course, what would you do if you were the monk? You either got to kill the goat, have sex with the woman, or drink alcohol. Or she's going to kill herself. Well, you don't want her to kill herself. So what would you do? You think about, well, what's going to cause the least harm? You don't want to be taking the life of the goat, and you can't, as a monk, have sexual contact. So how could you possibly have sex with the woman? So of course, he decides, I'm going to drink the alcohol. Well, as it was, he drank the alcohol, killed the goat, and had sex with the woman, because he didn't have those safeguards in place, because he had lost his inhibitions and so forth. So, this is why they say that the intoxicant safeguards, it protects the other vows, and making sure that we abstain from alcohol gives us the best chance of keeping that pure morality of not killing and stealing and engaging in sexual relations with partners that aren't our own and telling major lies. So in this way, it's kind of like another analogy they use is talking about like a dam wall. Oh, you guys got the Hoover. You can think of a dam wall easily. So it holds back, doesn't it? It restrains, it holds back the water from gushing out everywhere. So in the same way, our vows are like a dam wall, a restraint, a restraining our body and speech from engaging in this flood of non-virtue. So that's one way we can think of it. Remember, these vows are pratamoksha vows, so they're for the purpose of liberation. So having a sense of renunciation, once again, renouncing samsara and focused on liberation, we take these vows, and we take them for this life. So refuge vow was until I attain enlightenment from a Mahayana perspective. These vows are until the end of this life. Once death comes, we relinquish the pratamoksha vows. And also the vows have different strengths. So we could all have pratamoksha vows, the same pratamoksha vow, and yet some will be super strong, others will be quite weak and fragile. So depending on your motivation when you take the vow will determine the strength by which the vow is received. So that's something to keep in mind. And some people, instead of taking this, lay people I'm talking about, instead of taking this no sexual misconduct, some people can take a different type of 5 abandonments where they actually take no sexual conduct. So they live in this, I think they call it Brahma-like conduct, or this, this pure sort of, morality where they don't engage in sexual context. So like lay people like Don Trompa, I think also Kudrila has this sort of, vow as well, where there's no sexual contact. So, this is also possible for lay vow holders to take that as a different type, to have it as no sexual conduct at all. There's also differences. So in the number, recently we had a refuge ceremony here, and the Lama said you have to take all 5. So that's pretty full on as well. So some will say you got to take all 5, some say you got to take none, some say you got to take at least 1, not killing. So you can see with the various Lamas, they're going to have different maybe teachings or lineages that they're relying on, or different interpretations, or their prerogative, right? What else do I want to say about this is they often talk about the pratamoksha vows as being like a clay pot. So some say that when a clay pot is broken, it's not like you can put it back together again. So what they're saying with that is that when you break one of these lay vows, that's it. Some say you cannot take the refuge, the pratamoksha vows again if you've broken it at the root. Others say you can take it again. Just make sure you purify and confess and all these things. So Kapje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he, I believe, said that you can take them again, but you just need to make sure you check up with what your individual Lama is going to say. And that person does become your guru because they're giving you the lineage back to the Buddha. So in the FPMT, this is the way this is taught. This is the way Lama Zopa Rinpoche presents it, that, that person, when you take that vow, necessarily becomes your guru. And definitely with taking the pratamoksha vows, they become your guru. So anytime you take vows or an oral transmission, these sorts of things, that becomes your guru from that time. So the other thing with these vows is you take them in relation to all sentient beings. You don't just say, okay, I'm not going to kill humans, but I'm going to kill animals. Not like that. You can choose which ones you take generally from a Lama. And, it's to be kept for the whole of one's life, not just when I'm in this situation. Like if war broke out in my country, well, then I would, allow myself to be killing and so forth. So you've got to think about when you take these vows, they're not just at a certain place and time in relation to a certain number of sentient beings, but not others. They're actually for the duration of one's life. Okay, so as long as you're keeping the vow, this is how it is. You can always hand back the vows. And if you don't hand them back and you break them, well, now I'm just going to think there's different positions. I might not go there because there's different positions for the Sutra School and Great Exposition School and so forth. So I'm going to leave that there. So these vows, so yeah, depending on motivation, strong or weak, taken for your life and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you break these 4 root vows or one of those root vows, then you lose the vow, so to speak. It's kind of like it's become, rotten or something like that. It's not that it just disappears. So, for instance, killing a human being is how you're going to lose the root vow, okay? A human being. As far as losing the root vow in relation to stealing is when you take what hasn't been freely given to you, something that is of value, something valuable to that person. And so there's different discussions, what does the value have to be and so forth, but there's different, you know, different positions, different interpretations. Just hold it as purely as you can, that you don't take what it is valued by another person. Engaging in sexual misconduct has many aspects to it. To lose it from the root would be to engage in sexual relations with somebody else's partner. So sometimes they also say someone who is under the care of another, like a child and so forth. The supreme lie, which would break this vow at the root, is to lie about spiritual attainments, to say that one has bodhicitta, you know, to say that one has achieved realizations of the paths and grounds. I believe also to say one has achieved calm abiding. So these are like a different, you know, level to our, you know, desire realm mind. And these are lying about spiritual attainments. So this breaks it at the root. So best not to even pretend that one has achieved such realizations when one has not. Now, if you don't break the vow, you can still damage it. So although you won't lose it entirely, you can damage it. And let's say you break an arm. Okay, that arm can repair, but it's never going to be as strong as what it was before you had the break. Yeah. In that way, you can transgress the vow of killing by killing animals. So break it at the root is to kill a human. To kill an animal doesn't break it at the root. It's still there. It's just degenerated, and you definitely need to confess and purify and, you know, take remedy to like you would to, you know, put a stint in or whatever and sling it and all of these things that you have to try to, you know, repair a broken arm. But in this case, it's more like breaking your neck because it's a vow. Stealing an object of no value is still transgressing the vow. You receive a downfall, but you still have the vow. You still have the pratamoksha vow. Okay? And then engaging in sexual conduct on holy days, you know, when it's like multiple merit multiplying days, or, you know, in front of stupas. And, you know, this is why we take these objects out of our bedroom if we're lay people, because we don't want to be engaging in sexual conduct in front of holy objects or at holy places or on holy days, or if you've taken 1 day vows. Now, this is talking about 1 day vows from a pratamoksha 1 day, but also the same thing might be considered in the sense of the different to the 1 day pratamoksha vows is the 1 day Mahayana vows, the 8 Mahayana precepts, but the same thing would apply there. So these are degenerating or transgressing the vow, but it's not breaking it at the root. And then telling ordinary lies. So not lying about spiritual attainments that you don't have, but just, you know, lying about, you know, just everyday things. This is something that goes against the spirit of that vow to not lie. So that's transgressing the vow. And if you drink alcohol, that transgresses this vow of not drinking alcohol. So also, once again, I don't know if I said before, some lamas have different interpretations on this. Some say, I think His Holiness may have said this. I would not want to take that as fact, because I should not say that if I don't know for sure. But I think there are some who have said that that vow, as they are giving it, is not to get drunk. Okay. But others will say it's to not drink at all. And others will say it's not to drink or take drugs that are to get high, to make an unclear mind. It's not saying don't take medicine. That's crazy talk, because that's just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Naturally, for temporary problems, we need temporary solutions like medicine. This is important and vital. It'd be fundamentalist to think otherwise, not the middle way at all. But taking antibiotics does not give one this mind, altering substances where they're going to, kill the goat and have sex with a woman and all of these sorts of things, right? So yeah, once again, checking up. Some say, what about nicotine and vaping and all this sort of stuff? And others say, well, that doesn't really change the mind to become unclear in the same way alcohol does. So you have to check out what's the intention based on what the Lama is giving as advice there. Okay, and can just stop sharing for a second. So yeah, basically, it's really about respecting, isn't it? It's about cultivating that respect in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the very teachings of the Buddha are to not harm and to protect the mind, subdue the mind, tame the mind. And these are the trainings by which we can adopt to make sure that we're guarding our mind to not create afflictions by which we produce non-virtue, to keep our mind in virtue, cultivate virtuous actions, and purify non-virtue, refrain from harming in any way, cultivate remedies and so forth, to not harm but to benefit. This is all the basically what we're getting at here. Okay, any questions or doubts at this stage? Aaron.
What does confession mean in this context? Like, what would this be? What, for example, is like what's in the Vajrasattva style meditation?
Bodhisattva is the best, right? Because he made prayers as a bodhisattva that whoever recites his mantra, have the ability to purify all their non-virtues since beginningless time, all degenerated vows, all that sort of stuff. So Vajrasattva would be all powerful, definitely, as long as you're incorporating the four opponent powers. So, the power of reliance, refuge and bodhicitta. The power of regret. The stronger the regret, the stronger will be your restraint, refraining from doing the action again. And the remedy would be, Vajrasattva mantras of the visualization and so forth, or, as well as, some other sort of countermeasure, like, the animal liberation and these sorts of things, doing some sort of good. So some sort of benefit for that being in particular that you've harmed. Because we don't want the results of suffering to ripen for us, and also because as Mahayanas we wish to benefit and not harm, so we would naturally want to be free from creating further harm. And these things are definitely possible. So the stronger your restraint, even if it's just for 1 minute, or you do Vajrasattva before you go to sleep, from now until I wake up, I will not engage in this negative action. That's already maybe 6, 7, 8 hours. And then, you do that night after night after night. It might be from now until lunchtime. I will not engage in this. And slowly over time, the stronger our restraint becomes, then it just naturally seems to be that we're not continuing to engage in that non-virtue. But it does take time for sure to build up, like at the gym, build up the muscle. Well, something much more precious and more powerful than a muscle. We've got to build up the mind to restrain from these actions. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, anything else? Because otherwise I'll just conclude with the benefits of protecting the vows. So basically, if we protect the vows, then naturally we won't fall to the lower realms. We will, because we're guarding our ethics, we will end up developing in our next life the body of a human or of a god. by protecting the vows, remember they're pratamoksha vows, which are vows which are a cause for liberation. So we will attain liberation. By living in vows, the virtue is constantly increasing. So even if we're asleep, if we're intoxicated, if we didn't take that fifth vow, for instance, and we are intoxicated, or if we're, lacking mindfulness, or, we're unconscious or something like this, it doesn't matter. As long as we are still in that body living, then what will happen there is we are constantly accumulating virtue. By taking these vows, the Buddha always thinks of us. And so in that way, we'll be protected. We won't be left out from the Buddha's omniscient mind. Remember, the Buddha helps all beings, whether they actually, rely on him, whether one's with a very sharp blade, slowly and deliberately cutting into, slicing, chunks off the arm, and the other side someone's anointing the holy precious body with perfume and so forth, and massaging it. The Buddha's going to have the same equal love and compassion and guide equally both beings. So I mean, this is beyond our imagination right now. It's quite inconceivable, the qualities of the Buddha. So naturally, we as a precious human rebirth holder and engaging in, the refuge vow and the trainings and so forth, naturally, the Buddhas are always going to be with us and guiding us. We can always feel that protection. Because we're not harming others, we're less likely to be harmed. It doesn't mean that harm will not come to us, because we're not wholeheartedly relying at all times on our refuge and our vow. We do have slip-ups because our samsaric mind is a lot stronger. But by living in the vow and cultivating that sort of virtue, then the most important time in our life, which is at the time of death, we're going to be remembering Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And in that sense, we'll be free of the lower rebirths and attain a good future rebirth. We'll die without regret. We would have lived our life in a way that benefits others. So by not killing was one of the root vows, right? So abandoning killing. Well, when you look at what is the effect of that, they call it, I think in Lamrim Chenmo, the causally concordant effect in terms of experience. What will we experience? By not killing, we'll experience a long life. Okay? By not stealing, then we're going to have, wealth and resources in future lives. We're creating these effects by creating the cause now and living in the vow. By not engaging in sexual misconduct, then our relationships are going to be harmonious. We're going to have lasting relationships if we want them, and find perfect partner and all these sorts of things. They're not going to cheat on us and so forth. If we abandon telling lies, then what we're going to find is that people don't cheat us. They don't blame us. We're going to be credible sources. We're going to be believable in what we say. And if we don't engage in drinking alcohol, taking intoxicants, then we're going to have a clear, sharp mind. This is the most precious. This is where I have regrets of how I lived my 20s and 30s. So anyway, have a sharp, clear mind would be amazing. Then we can penetrate the truth of reality. So if we develop this sort of realization that, takes refuge, then what we're going to find is that we're not going to, waste our time. We're going to try to keep our mind in virtue, causes of happiness, and we're going to try to refrain from non-virtue and purify and so forth. So as much as we can live in vows, the ones that we can keep, then we should definitely try to take them up. And something I know them, not everyone has a guru, and there may even be resistance to having a guru. But I would really urge and implore you to investigate if you have any resistance there, because without the guru, we don't receive the blessings, which we need to then soften the mind, make it malleable. And then without the blessings, we don't attain the realizations. So without the guru, there is no liberation. So that's a pretty bold statement. And I'm going to leave that with you to think about over the next week. And then if you want to discuss it, you feel free to next week with me. All right, so on that note, let's do the dedications. Screen share. So we can think that we've spent this time together, hopefully with minds of virtue, hopefully not giving rise to non-virtue. And if I was the cause of that, apologies. Sincerely, I'm laughing, but I mean it seriously. So hopefully we've only engaged in virtuous states of minds. You know, we're talking about the most precious thing. This does not have a value. You know, this is not some sort of transactional thing. So if you were to put a value on Dharma, there is no value. Not because it's without value, but because it cannot be calculated. To think about refuge and causes by which we don't suffer immeasurably, and more than that, to be free from cyclic existence altogether or attain lasting happiness, liberation, enlightenment, to be able to bring others to enlightenment. This is beyond any possible value that we can equate with anything in this life. So precious. We can pool all of our merit together in one great giant ocean of merit of all the past, present, and future Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And we can have a mind that remembers that just as I am merely labeled by the mind, a hallucination, merely labeled by mind, independence on body, speech, and mind, moments of mind, parts of the body. There is no findable me within this basis of designation existing from my own side. It's not possible, impossible. In the same way, the merit and the action of dedicating the merit also are merely labeled by mind, not existing independently, unrelatedly to its basis. And so we can pool all of this merit together, remembering the emptiness of the merit, ourselves, the action, and dedicating it for the enlightenment of every single sentient being. And we can recite together if you like. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Whatever white virtues were thus created, we dedicate as causes enabling us to uphold the holy Dharma of scriptures and realization, and to fulfill without exception the prayers and deeds of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times. By the force of this merit, may we never be parted in all our lives from Mahayana's 4 wheels, and may we reach the end of our journey along the paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, pure view, and the 2 stages of tantric practice. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Venerable.